We're going to welcome to stage Anita Lowenstein-Dent of Teach to Teach, of which she is the founder. And also welcoming back to the stage, Dr. Susan Dattenberg, Her Majesty, the Queen of GP Gopeta, and runner of the largest independent education Facebook page on Facebook in terms of likes. We are also going to have on this panel Justina Mutatale and Dio Israel, our very own Dio Israel, who is currently working on education as an appointed official with the government of Lagos State in Nigeria. So those speakers will be joining the panel as well. I'm going to go track them down, and we turn over to Tina now. We need to wrap this panel up promptly at 1:50 when we start our Sports for Development panel. Exciting number of steps. Here is the one and only Dio Israel making his way to the stage as well.
I love her hat.
And I will turn over to Tina Alton.
Do you want to use this or use that?
Whichever easier.
I think I hope so I can direct you. Thank you so much, Joseph. So whilst we're waiting for Justina to join, thank you very much. I was actually on the table discussing education. Now, we all know that the current conversation is, since we've entered 2020, is around the SDGs. And we have a decade to be able to achieve that. And I've been doing a little bit of reading and research on these goals and how we're going to be able to achieve them. And I came up with the idea, I'm going to copyright that, is that education is at the root or the core of being able to achieve any goal, whether it's the SDG or any goal that we would set for the government as entrepreneurs and our corporations. Because if somebody is educated to understand the importance of that solution, then they don't become averse to it, particularly across Africa. If we take the previous panel on technology and how some parts of Africa, it's been a real challenge to actually get the masses or even the government and the leadership on board, because it's seen as a threat. So how, if we're looking at Africa as a continent, how best can we utilize education as a tool, the powerful tool it is to be able to actually begin to see some of the changes that we really critically need, such as around health, such as around infrastructure, around communication, for example, entrepreneurship. How can we, bring the importance of education as a tool to be able to achieve some of these issues? So I'll start from yourself. Apologies, because
Anita.
Anita, yes.
Anita,
So yes.
So hello everybody, my name is Anita Lowenstein-Dent. I founded an NGO in 2017 called Teach to Teach International. Our proposition is very simple. We work in the world's most poverty-affected communities. We take unemployed young people who are born and live in those communities, and we train them to be teachers to work in the primary school setting in 8 days. We work effectively supporting underperforming or indeed failing national education systems, and we work completely under the umbrella of SDG 4, which is quality education for all, and quality is absolutely the catchword of this, and SDG 8, which is quality jobs and training for all. So as such, we completely sit within what you were saying was the drive. Now, the UN has modeled that of all of their 17 SDGs, they now consider the most important multiplier SDG to be number 4, education, upon which all other SDG goals will be achieved. Without education, there is less hope of reaching those all-important goals. So in terms of answering your direct question about how we can do it, We can do it from the grassroots up, while at the same time engaging all of the necessary stakeholders. And within Teach to Teach, the way that we do that is, as I explained, have local ownership, local buy-in from stakeholders, from traditional authority to local authorities, and at the national level make sure that we've engaged with the systems that are in place, because working outside the system that is in place can create a lot of grit. But in order to really get the maximum outcome for the maximum people, you have to work within the system and change the system from within by modelling the very best practice. Our own program is based on 20 years of work, and so the other very important thing is that very often we reach for new ideas, and that is fantastic. We need innovation in this sector, but we must remember to work with what works. And when you have an evidence base, not to say, right, let's stop funding that, that was good, that's finished, but then to use that and multiply the impact of that and globalize it and adapt it. And the system, our method, our system is based on over 20 years of evidence base. And our project is to now grow it with backers such as the World Bank and with the international funders such as DFID, who are our current funder, USAID, to make sure that this change is now held and that it is adopted by national governments. And that is a very big project.
Well done. Thank you so much. You have to forgive me because the names have all gone.
This is so easy. I'm just Susie. My name is when you get to my surname, it's difficult for me too. My approach to education is actually started quite different because by mere coincidence, I ended up in a very remote area of Ghana, basically on the Togolese border, in a community which, as a favor, I decided I built a school. It's a crazy amount of work to build a school in Ghana. It really is. But we had to get the bricks brought in, we had to make them themselves, we had to find somebody who can design, an architect who can design the building. We had to get electricity there, we had to get toilets there, which the Africans, well, the Ghanaians call them seaters. So we got a 6-seater there, which I found is an amazing language. And we set up in this community of 10,000 people a school which in the end had 1,000 children. And in the community, everybody over the age of, 28 is illiterate, and now everybody under the age of 28 is literate. What I found, with the help of amazing headmisters, but what I found was that overall in education, in almost Pan-African, is that you can teach reading and writing basics very easily. I mean, learning the alphabet and learning to write it is quite easy. It becomes very, very difficult to get from a reading level of a 7-8-year-old to the reading level that we are used to. In other words, a reading level which is of use to us, because we can write contracts and we can read the newspaper and we can design things and we can work, we can go and run a hotel or a business. And I felt there was a complete lack of African-based, African-centric reading material. My first step was then to bring over material from England and translate it and transport it to Africa. I must say that project failed on all fronts. It failed because English old textbooks are not suitable to an African continent. The contents doesn't fit. The transport was expensive. I got across a lot of corruption in terms of the payments. I then distributed to the bush. I mean, to get it there was really difficult. But once it was there, it was treated like gold and nobody would use the system and nobody understood a library system. I give the book and get it back. It was an idea of mine which I think really failed. And I feel it's a little bit a retro idea because that's what you used to do 10, 20 years ago. Now we've got the internet. All this information can just be put on social media. We just sent it across. We now have 350 authors. They write for us completely African-centric information. In other words, if you look at Right for Education, more or less the continent is finished at the borders of the continent. It's about food in Africa, it's about health programs in Africa, it's about education in Africa, it's about entrepreneurship in Africa, it's about Africa. There's no article on there which is not about Africa. It's African-centric. And people read it, 7 million people read it. We are the biggest page in Africa, independent. Interesting, and I've not mentioned that before, but our competition is actually quite radical social media pages coming out of, I guess, Saudi. Yeah. So, you know, we have to really see there's a little war going on between influencing on the African continent. But to round it up, the most common comment I get on my website, which is the most standard comment, is, I'm quite well educated, but I haven't got a job. This is the most common comment I get. And the people who tend to write them, they write them in good English or in good French. They are educated and there are no jobs. So they feel a bit despondent of saying, well, I've done my best, I've been extremely good at school, where did it get me?
Okay, thank you. And is it...
Dyer, Israel.
Dyer.
Yeah.
So what would you say are some of the challenges that in your experience, in your line of work, and, you know, being an advocate for Africa, what would you say some of the challenges when you think of education, and how can we create solutions to speak to those challenges?
So thank you so much. By way of background, my name is Dyer Israel. I'm a permanent board member of the board of SUBEB. SUBEB is the Lagos State Universal Basic Education Board. In Nigeria, we have the Universal Basic Education Commission. It's the federal government of Nigeria's agency created by law to ensure that every child of school age gets free compulsory basic education from year 1 to year 9, at least in Nigeria. So the domestication of that in the states across Nigeria is what is now known as SUBEB, taken out of UBEC. So all the 36 states of Nigeria have that same agency funded by both the federal government, the state government, and the local government. The agency is responsible for 3 major elements. First is the hiring of teachers, promotion, retention, training, pensioning, from entry to exit of the teachers into the system, and then the management of the children themselves. We admit the children into school, we promote them from class to class, we assess them, we conduct the exams, and everything that, and the third part is the infrastructure development. We build the schools, we furnish the schools, and what have you. So in Lagos, for example, where I work full-time as a member of the board of SUBEB, we have 1,016 public primary schools in Lagos. I'm one of the 6 people that manages those, led by a chairman making 7. So the 7 of us on the board, we're permanent board members, executive board members, and my role is in charge, I'm board member in charge of education quality assurance, basic education quality assurance, BECA, BEQA. And the goal is to ensure that we have quality education. While we fight for affordable education, we talk about free education. It's also important that the level of the education being received by the pupils is of quality. So part of the things that we do, for example, or in particular my department, is in monitoring quality assurance in the school in terms of infrastructure, in terms of technological adaptation, in terms of learning, teaching and learning outcomes for the children, and also above all quality assurance in the well-being of the pupils in all our 1,016 schools in Lagos. Now this is the story. When my governor, Mr. Babajide Olusola Sanwo-Olu, was elected as the governor of Lagos State in 2019, part of his vision is to make Lagos a 21st century megacity. So he said to himself, we need to be able to do that by empowering our young people, preparing the next generation for leadership. So we have education and technology as the critical element of his methodology to empower young people and make Lagos 21st century megacity. His campaign was premised on 6 words called THEMES, THEMES. T for traffic and transport management. If you've ever been to Lagos, Nigeria, you will know that that is a priority. You know, in the past you could, spend 5 to 6 hours between, a 1 kilometer journey. But part of the priority of the governor is to ensure that that is cut down, is bringing innovation in transportation. The H is health care, and the E is in the environment. The first E is education and technology, and that's where the work that we're doing is. A few months ago, about 3 months ago, we launched a new program called Eco Excel. Eco is another word for Lagos. It's the Yoruba word for Lagos. The Eco Excel program is modeled after the Bridge teaching model. So what we have done, for example, introduced under our new administration, particularly our own board, our team of 7 leadership with our permanent secretary, is to introduce this new program that ensures that all our classrooms are digitalized. So, for example, from the time we introduced the program on January 25th, we have trained about 5,000 teachers already. In April, we're training another set. And then in September, all the 1,016 schools and all our teachers are all going to be EcoExcel schools. What does EcoExcel info? All our teachers now go into their classroom with a tab. Before EcoExcel, if you were in Majidu in Lagos, the teacher was writing the lesson note. And what you learn there is different from what you're learning in Makoko, in Yaba. It's different from what you're learning in Badagry or what you're learning in Keja. But right now, everything is digitalized and centralized. So it's unified learning that also results in unified examination and unified learning outcomes. So what you're learning in one part of the state is the same thing you're learning in other parts of the state. So even if you relocate for any reason or you transfer for any reason, you wouldn't have missed anything too much because it's the same thing. For the teachers, it's also very good because the teachers themselves don't have to write lesson notes anymore. They have more time to do other things for self-development, for personal development. They have the digitalized system. They get into the classroom. They have everything here. And what they're teaching here is what they're teaching across the state. And what we're seeing from this is that young people are able to learn more. We're able to also ensure that teachers are in school because the tabs are all geolocated. So we know when you're in class, we know when you're in school. It tells us how many minutes you're supposed to spend on each lecture. So for example, you get into class in the morning, you have to sync it with the head teacher's tab that says you're in the school compound. If you log in 20 miles away, it tells us in the back end, and we can see it at Subeb that you're not in the school compound, you're far away from the school compound. And we can query you. Interestingly, my department is in charge of investigations and all of that and quality assurance. So, we're very strict on those kind of implementation. And then when we ensure that you're in school on time and you're teaching the young people, we're also concerned about content. So when you go to the learning in the tab, it tells you you're going to be teaching jolly phonics or comprehension. So it says to you, comprehension is 5 pages. You should spend 20 minutes on this lecture. Yeah. If you swap the page in a space of 5 minutes, it tells us incomplete tutorial.
Right.
And what that does is we know if you're teaching the young people the value or not. Now we take attendance 3 times a day. About 3 times. I know we take it in the morning, I think we'll take it during the break time, and we'll take it at the closing time. So we know if a child is in school in the morning but did not stay until the end of school, we're able to capture what you're learning, and we're able to measure the impact of the learning that you're giving. Now, finally, one of the other things is that we've looked at it beyond getting you into the school. There are 2 models that we've introduced to complement our basic education in Lagos State. The first is to get the children into school. So we're also increasing our enrollment for our schools. We've introduced a program. It was a federal government initiated program called the Homegrown School Feeding Program that ensures that every child in any of our Lagos schools get a meal a day free of charge, courtesy of the federal and the state government. We provide the bowls, we provide the spoons, the cutleries, the water bottles, the water, caterers, our quality assurance staff, are all in the schools every day ensuring that children are eating well. Now, the food gets you into the school, but the food doesn't retain you into the school because you can eat the food and disappear. What we've introduced with the EcoExcel, that's the reality.
We need this in the UK, I'm telling you.
What we've introduced into the school is to ensure that learning becomes interesting and that you enjoy classroom. So, for example, when a teacher... Before in our schools, when a child gets a question wrong, a teacher can say, "Oh, that's wrong. Oh, you idiot, you don't know anything." When I was growing up, they would say, "Olo donie omo." In other words, you're a dull-headed. But you don't say that anymore. Under EcoExcel school, you say 2 plus 2. If they say 4, you say that's correct. When you say that's correct, it's not just there. You say, "Good job, you," and everybody in class says, "Good job, me." So right now, good job, you.
Good job, me.
Exactly. That's what happens in our classroom in Lagos.
Yes.
In addition to that, we also encourage and inspire the children in our classroom. We have a song, for example, we say, "You are special, you are special." You can personalize the song.
Yes.
Look at me, look at me. Someone very special, because it's me. And almost every morning we get the children to sing the song. And so our classrooms are now interactive, they're engaging, they get the young people to enjoy school. The food brings them, but the value of learning that we're giving to them and making classroom interactive retains them. Thank you.
Wonderful. So you've answered all the remaining 7 questions I had for you. But I love the education system. I love that you're able to keep engagements, the teachers, there's tracking, there's measurement, and the value added itself is like priceless. So well done. We need that in the UK. I think we can speak to Boris Johnson after here, definitely. I want to move to you, Justina, and we had a little conversation around the subject, and one of the things he said which really got me excited was, when we think about education, we should not forget gender parity, the gender equality parity gap, however words you want to use it. So my question to you is, why is education so important for Africa? And while we think of its importance for the continent, what should we do or our leaders, our leadership, or even us as, the diaspora and wanting to be part of the vehicle for change on the continent? What should we be thinking about in terms of the gender parity?
Okay, hello everyone. My name is Justina Mutale. I am the founder of Justina Mutale Foundation. We offer, to do with one of our programs is to provide education, and to do with education, we give scholarships to academic young women from rural areas of Africa, from disadvantaged families, but those that exhibit academic excellence. We give them scholarships to go to access tertiary education across the globe, all around the world. We work in partnership with different scholarship providers, as well as directly with different universities that give us these scholarships. There's been a lot of emphasis on education and also educating the girl child from different organizations, but most of this has been sort of confined to early child education and maybe up to just secondary school. So this is where my organization picked up, because we are in the 4th industrial revolution. What is anybody going to do with a secondary school education? When you talk about African leaders, I remember in Zambia, I'm from Zambia, when we gained independence, the emphasis from our new government and our president was providing free education to every school-going age child. And it didn't matter whether you were a boy or a girl, you had to go to school. In fact, I do remember that this is what inspired me to start the scholarship program. When this was offered to my father, who was working in the city, he didn't have children old enough to go to school. So at his workplace, they told them that if you don't have your own children old enough to go to school, you can bring a relative. My brother had to go to the village and to bring his young brother, who was kind of heading cattle, so my mother told me, and he didn't even have any shoes and had tattered clothes and things like that, and he got him from the village and brought him into the city and got him under the new education program that the government brought. My uncle went on to gain his master's and PhD and became the first ever Zambian meteorologist in Zambia. Wow. So the point for me, what showed was that you would have a lot of children that are capable, but because they do not have the opportunities, then they are left just to languish. And also, when we look back at the education system in Africa up to now, to some extent, it's still set to the industrial age of the 20th century, where you are churning out a certain number of children for certain jobs, just a few number of jobs, doctors, accountants, and this and that, and really neglecting the capabilities that children might have, because every child has a potential to excel at something. And again, in that kind of education system, the failure is inbuilt. Children are automatically dropped off. When we started our scholarship program and when we invited girls to apply, we had girls who had finished secondary school 7 years ago. and they couldn't proceed to university. But they had the highest marks, distinctions in everything. They couldn't proceed to university because they didn't have the opportunity, they didn't have the support. They came, of course, like I said, rural areas. They came from poor backgrounds. But also, let's go back again. In my country, Zambia, and in most countries in Africa, we have a lot of nursery schools. Then we have a lot of primary schools, but less primary schools than nursery schools. Then we have less secondary schools than primary schools. Then we have even less universities than secondary schools. So even if every child at secondary school level had distinction, there are not enough universities to absorb them. They've got nowhere to proceed to. So that is another thing. And we also need to look at changing the curriculum. The curriculum, like I said, is still set to an industrial age. It's been estimated that by the year 2030 or so, there will be so many millions of new jobs that require new skills, new digital skills. So the curriculum needs to be changed to suit the jobs of the future, to suit a digital economy. That's what we need to be working at. And coming back to gender equality, so this is why we started this scholarship program focusing on the girl child. Of course, we've had a few complaints here and there saying that if you focus too much on taking the girl child up, you're tilting the table, the scales the other way around. The boy child will be left behind. So now we give, for every 5 scholarships to the girls, 1 scholarship goes to the boys, just so we can try and keep that balance. But it is very important because statistics have shown that an educated woman, the children from an educated woman will automatically get educated. Children of an affluent woman will automatically lead an affluent life. I've had friends of my own whose fathers were, so to speak, millionaires, but because when they left their mother or the mother died and the father married another woman, the children led a very poor family life, even though the father was rich. But a woman, in most cases, will always carry the child with them, and the child will have the same kind of life that the woman has. And also the affluence, or the education of the mother, will automatically trickle down from one generation to the next. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And then I would like to come to you as well. When we think of Africa, I remember last year we were writing a white paper on, education, and time and time it kept coming up that employers are no longer looking for like academic performance. We're now looking at soft skills, and we know that in education or in developing soft skills such as leadership or teamwork, gamification is very much ahead of the curve. Do you feel that this is a case for Africa when we think of education and when we think of improving or increasing soft skills?
Thank you very much. Yesterday I was on a panel where I talked about the base of the challenge in Africa for education development, and I'll repeat that for the benefit of those that were not here. I strongly believe, I'm very familiar with the Lagos Excel, story, and the new leadership in Lagos and the out of this world kind of description that we got from Dayo Israel about what's happening in Lagos. But Lagos is like a country within a country when you compare the rest of the 36 plus 1 states in Nigeria. And as much as Lagos is leading in that space and using those, technology-driven, I'm afraid that the remaining states that are not in the southwest,
Aside from Kaduna.
aside from Kaduna, are in complete opposite of what has just been described. In fact, in northwest Nigeria, again with the exception of Kaduna, I'm talking about Kebbi, Sokoto, Jigawa, Katsina, and Kano states, with over 13 million children. We have hardcore evidence that over 6 million of that are out of school, and they are of school going age. And there is everything, including school feeding, in those areas. But how do you protect, a school that does not have any walls? The children come, they eat, and of course, they take a stroll. Some of the schools do not have toilet facilities, so I can just say, I want to go home to go and ease myself. And of course, the moment I get out, I've already eaten for the day, and that's the end of it. So, but the bottom line is not even the structure or the teaching methodology. The challenge that I see is in the original context of how do we teach these children at basic education. China today, Malaysia today, Indonesia today are leading the world in tech because the children are first and foremost taught in mother tongue. They start learning basic education in mother tongue. They are not taught English until they have understood basic literacy and numeracy in the mother tongue. So they use the mother tongue to teach all the other soft skills and additional knowledge that the children need to get. And from that point alone, you jumpstart the kids. Today, all of us have Chinese coming into the countries in Africa. More than 70% of those Chinese technicians do not speak English. They come in and learn English using Chinese to learn English, and then they just come and get their job done. It does not matter if you bring in, an architect or a builder or anyone into any of these infrastructure projects, they do not need to speak English to be able to fix whatever needs to be fixed. That's one key thing that we need to have. Back to soft skills for Africa. The leadership of any political system can only produce its likes. If you have people who got into office because they got people who put them there, the likelihood is that they will do the bidding of the people that put them there. And I've always said this, that the politicians are the greatest beneficiary of illiteracy. They will not do anything to change the status quo. Because the moment the people are free and they have the knowledge, they will break away from the jinx of bad leadership. Thank you.
May I add to that? Because in my village, I had this funny conversation about getting the girls to school. And my elder said, it's no good, no good. And I said, so why is that not good if the girls go to school? He said, once they got money in their pockets, they talk back. And I think that sums it up. This is what tries to keep women in their place, Once they have money and independence, then similar I'm talking here my village and you talk the state, but the message is the same.
Thank you so much for that. So I'm going to read something out. This is just literacy rate. This is as of 2015, 81%. Seychelles, Equatorial Guinea, 95,000, actually has been identified as the best educational system in all of Africa with 69.3 points. It is the only African country in the top 50 education system globally. 43rd position ahead of Ukraine, Hungary, Russia, UAE. Right, so it brings hope to the fact that actually Africa is beginning to, shift. When I was growing up, I grew up in Ghana up to first degree. Infrastructure, overcrowding, sanitation, poor quality materials, school management system, and actually the lack of compulsory educational requirement were some of the things that we had to fight to overcome. Now, I know that if we look at like Eco Excel, which we definitely bring into UK, like I'm all for it, is in Africa. How can we begin to engage with our leadership to actually look at some of these systems? Because I had a startup in Ghana, and he was putting in school management system. I think across Africa, less than 2% of schools across Africa actually use digital school management system. And the barriers, because it's like, it's a threat. How can we begin to engage with our leadership so that these issues that when I was growing up and my children's year group, in some parts of Ghana, some parts of Africa are still facing the same issue of infrastructure, overcrowding, sanitation, poor quality materials, lack of educational being a required part of life, if you will. How can we change? How can we move the needle?
I think, let me quickly say something here. There are two issues that are mitigating against good quality education. And I'll give you an example, again in the north of Nigeria, where the World Bank sponsored a £100 million project to do what is called school improvement grants, with the intention that the problem is that the current structure that Dio described earlier, where you have a universal basic education at the federal level and you have a state universal basic education at the lower level. Then further down, you have what we call the local government education authority, which is the closest to the school. Now, the project was to reverse it, and instead of going through these tiers of, let's go straight to the school, let's set up what we call local school community-based SBMCs, school-based management committees. And the school-based management committees are supposed to have members of the community, including religious leaders and trusted people in the community, and then put the head teacher as the secretary to that. And then release money directly to this committee to manage the schools. And it was piloted in about 300 schools. Guess what happens? The money comes into that cover. The local government team are unhappy because the money has now eluded them and gone straight into the schools. Now, within the schools, they're supposed to use it for basic sanitation, getting reading materials, ensuring that there's all these issues about overcrowding, repair desk and all of that. Very good idea.
Quality education.
Quality education and all of that. But the problem is, the moment the money gets in, the secretary, who is the head teacher, suddenly feels very rich. There's now money. And then discusses with, his members of the committee. They're supposed to be between 7 and 17 members. And there must be at least a woman, within this. The problem is, the woman is intimidated by the rest of the team. The religious leaders and the respected members of the community take charge. The head teacher is respected as the most learned in the community, and so nobody can challenge him. So the whole essence of the school-based management committee structure is faulted on the fact that they think that the head teacher will do better with people, managing the school with him or her. Trust me, within the last 4 years of doing an evaluation, the learning outcomes using standard EGRA, which is early grade reading assessment methodology that is approved by the World Bank and the Education for All, has shown that there has been no movement in the needle in terms of increase in education quality in those areas, in those states, because of those challenges. So for me, I think that we need to move education from the profit-making hand that we have now into a social service into the communities. And that's where all of you that are in the diaspora comes to play. You need to begin to think of education as a social enterprise. The same way she went into Ghana, the same way, she's working from Zambia. All of us need to walk backwards into those communities where we're coming from and begin to be the change that we wish to see. We will not do it thinking about profit. We can only do it in a socially sustainable manner, where we will go and volunteer, where we will go and develop our areas, where we will donate not books that we have collected from the UK schools, because they will just not use them. We need to find books that are culturally sensible to those particular areas where we want to see the change.
Can I quickly say this, that what is very important and what we must... I've been 20-something years in the development sector. I've worked with UNICEF, British Council, and all of that. I'm now in government and politics. The reality is that we need to fix government.
Yes.
I completely agree.
If we do everything that we do as charities, it is not sustainable in transforming the educational sector of the continent. And the challenge is we're not going to be able to fix this if we don't have the right kind of leadership, political leadership in particular, that has the interests of the people at heart. Let me give you an example. As of last year, our budgetary allocation to education was 8%. This year, because of political will of my governor, His Excellency Mr. Sanwo-Olu, we have increased budgetary allocation to 13% for education. And the target is actually to even get to 18% and then move on afterwards year in, year out. The reality is this. If we don't have the right kind of people who value education at the helms of affairs,
Yes.
we would only have people who are tokenistics, who are just about giving, mouth
service.
what's the word? The word eludes me.
service.
Lip service, yes.
Lip service,
Lip service contribution to education. Now, one of the challenges we also see is that we still have people doing infrastructure development. They're building so many schools, not because the children need the schools, but because they want to give contracts to their cronies to be able to do infrastructure.
So it comes down to accountability. I'm conscious of that. It comes down to accountability
Absolutely.
because we have like corrupt leadership, government globally, everywhere,
Yes.
including the UK, right? However, there are systems and frameworks. We have 5 minutes left. 2. Okay, thank you. There are systems that holds them accountable.
But
It's
very difficult. I mean, at my school, you have a canteen, and and I provide the food, and they just water it down and siphon it off. And I do think the big problem is accountability, and it's corruption on all fronts.
Yes.
And it's very, very difficult to run such a large undertaking as the African continent and the volume of young children who participate in the education program. And if I might finish on a personal note, I'm amazed that Africa, and I'm talking to various countries and education systems, and they say they're short of school books. And I know 7 million people read what we do, and yet they don't plug in my free information, which I offer to them for free. They don't plug it in because they plug it in as soon as I give them a little bit of a backhander. They talk to me and they want to plug it in, but then they say, what do you do for me? And I say, on top of providing the information for free, what else do you
Give them
need?
a hug and say that's it. You can't go wrong with that. But I'm conscious of our 30 seconds remaining.
But
So
I
in 30
wanted,
seconds, if we
yeah.
can go around and say what needs to change.
Okay, I wanted to say that we really shouldn't be leaving everything to government. Of course, government is there to enable us to set systems in place and all of that. But I think after 50 years independence, so many people educated, people getting good jobs and starting businesses, some of these things we could take away from the government, like you said, and make it a social enterprise, or even as private business. For example, in Zambia, we've got a lot of new schools that are built privately by private people. Of course, we've also got a rising middle income class so that these can afford to put their children in the newly built private schools, while the state schools can absorb the poor rural communities that cannot afford to pay for education.
Okay.
I think we need to also tap into what to bridge the gap. What governments cannot do, we as citizens should take that up and do it ourselves. If we leave everything to government, then we know we are not moving and not going anywhere.
Wonderful. So we need to keep the dialogue going where it's real impactful, transformative dialogue going. I think our tractor is behind us to mow us away. So thank you so much, each and everyone on the panel. If you have any further questions, please reach out to them.
Can we have, as a pupil in the class, can we ask Joseph, Mr. Teacher, can we have like one question from the audience for the panel?
Yeah, and from Prof, maybe.
I think we should move on in the interest of time. I think all the speakers will be here and are happy to take questions from the crowd. So please feel free to approach them if you have any questions. But let's give them a big round of applause and take a group photo. Where's the cameraman? Oh.